Germany, 1923. Hyperinflation destroys the national currency. A single loaf of bread costs 200 billion marks. Paper bills lose value faster than the printing presses can run. Families stop buying fuel. They burn stacks of banknotes in their stoves because paper is cheaper than firewood. The economy is a graveyard. Then comes 1929. The Great Depression hits the globe. German banks collapse overnight. Factory gates are locked. Production stops. By 1933, 6 million Germans are unemployed. That is 30% of the entire workforce. Men stand on street corners with signs hanging from their necks. Families starve in the shadows of silent chimneys. This is the Germany Adolf Hitler inherits in January 1933. The nation has been economically destroyed twice in one decade. But look at the map 6 years later, September 1st, 1939. Everything has changed. Germany invades Poland. They deploy 3 million soldiers. 3,000 tanks move across the border. 4,000 modern aircraft fill the sky. It is the most advanced military force in Europe. In 6 years, a bankrupt nation built the most powerful war machine in history. How is this possible? At first glance, a miracle of national recovery. But in reality, a massive financial fraud. The answer involves a fake company, a financial wizard, and a national-scale Ponzi scheme. It was called the Mefo bills. This was a shadow banking system. It funded Nazi rearmament while hiding the debt from the world. The mechanism was simple but deceptive. The government did not pay arms manufacturers with cash. Instead, they used promissory notes issued by a shell company. This company had no assets. It had no employees. It was a front. The banks accepted these notes as if they were gold. The footage from the era shows factories working 24 hours a day. The sound of hammers and presses never stops. But there was a catch. By 1939, the bills were coming due. The debt was astronomical. Germany did not have the marks to pay the interest. The treasury was empty. The situation was critical. Germany had no choice but to invade its neighbors. They needed to seize gold reserves, factories, and raw materials from other nations. It was the only way to avoid total economic collapse at home. The Nazi economy was not built on stable growth. It was a financial scam that required constant expansion to survive. Hitler did not just want war. He needed it to stay solvent. This is how the regime paid for the Second World War. Economic collapse made the invasion of Europe inevitable. The bills were paid in blood. January 1939. The German economy is a hollow shell. Hjalmar Schacht, the top economist, looks at the balance sheets. He sees the truth. The gold reserves are gone. The debt is astronomical. Hitler has only one plan left to stay afloat: total war. Schacht has two choices. He can speak the truth and face the Gestapo, or he can stay silent and watch the world burn. How did Germany reach this point of no return? To understand the desperation of 1939, you must look at two specific catastrophes. The first hit in November 1923. This was the peak of Weimar hyperinflation. The numbers were incomprehensible. One single US dollar was worth 4 trillion German marks. People carried cash in laundry baskets. Children played with stacks of currency like toy blocks because the paper was cheaper than wood. The logistics of survival became a nightmare. Factory owners paid workers twice a day, once at noon, once at the end of the shift. Workers handed the cash to their wives through the factory gates. The women then ran to the stores immediately. They had to. By evening, those morning wages lost half their value. The footage from the era shows the chaos in the streets. Restaurants did not use printed menus. They used chalkboards. Waiters climbed onto chairs every 30 minutes to erase the prices and write higher ones while customers were still chewing their food. The social fabric tore apart. Families who saved for 40 years saw their life insurance policies mature. The payout couldn't buy a postage stamp. Savings, pensions, and investments disappeared in weeks. This wasn't a recession. It was a total economic apocalypse. The middle class was liquidated. The country eventually stabilized the currency. Life returned to the streets. Then came October 1929. The Great Depression hit. The impact was immediate. American banks panicked and called in their international loans. German businesses lost their credit lines overnight. Factories shuttered their windows. The unemployment line began to grow. 6 million people were out of work. The Weimar Republic was dying. This was the opening Hitler needed. The crisis was the fuel. He was the match. Events accelerated. There was no turning back. 6 million people. That was the number of Germans without work by 1932. It represented 30% of the entire workforce. The evidence was visible on every street corner. Families hauled their beds and tables onto the pavement, auctioning them off to buy bread. Professionals with degrees joined the bread lines. Engineers and teachers stood in the mud begging for manual labor jobs. The Weimar government was paralyzed by debt and indecision. The streets were not safe. Political violence became a daily routine. Communist and Nazi paramilitaries fought with pipes and pistols, turning major cities into active war zones. Germany had suffered 2 complete economic collapses in only 14 years. This environment of chaos and hunger brought Adolf Hitler to power in January 1933. He made specific promises. He pledged to restore German greatness, rebuild the military, and shred the Treaty of Versailles. But there was a problem. Germany was bankrupt. The Versailles Treaty was a cage. It limited the army to 100,000 soldiers. It banned tanks. It banned combat aircraft. It banned submarines and heavy artillery. Even if Hitler ignored the rules, the state had no currency to fund a factory. He needed to rearm massively and secretly. He had to build a war machine without the world noticing until the weapons were ready. To do this with a destroyed economy, he needed a specialist. Enter Hjalmar Schacht. He was the man who would make the impossible happen. Hjalmar Horace Greeley Schacht was born in 1877. He was a banker, an economist, and a financial strategist. He had already saved the nation once before. In 1923, Schacht served as currency commissioner. He stopped hyperinflation by creating the Rentenmark, a currency backed by land rather than gold. The move worked. The economy stabilized. Schacht became a financial legend. March 17, 1933. Hitler appointed him president of the Reichsbank. This was Germany's central bank. By August 1934, Schacht also became the Minister of Economics. His mission was clear: fund a massive military expansion. He had to do it without triggering another inflation crisis and without revealing the scale of the spending to foreign powers. Schacht was brilliant. He devised a plan to hide the money. What was Hitler's primary challenge? Germany needed steel, chemicals, and heavy machinery. To get them, the government had to pay arms manufacturers and shipyards. But if the Reichsbank simply printed paper marks to pay these bills, the system would collapse. First, inflation would explode. The German public would not tolerate another 1923. They remembered the hunger. Second, these massive payments would appear on official budgets. The world would see the rearmament. Schacht had to find a way to pay for tanks using money that didn't officially exist. Official Reichsbank statements. Foreign governments watch them closely. They scan every line for signs of military spending. If they see Germany rearming, they will intervene. They will crush the regime before it is ready for war. Hitler requires invisible money. He needs capital that avoids inflation. He needs funds that vanish from official records. Hjalmar Schacht finds the solution. How did one man hide $1 trillion buildup? At first glance, it seemed impossible. But in reality, it was a simple paper trick. In 1934, Schacht establishes a new entity. The name is Metallurgische Forschungsgesellschaft, MBH. In English, the Metallurgical Research Company. Its common name is Mefo. On the surface, it is a research consortium. 4 industrial giants hold the shares: Siemens, Krupp, Rheinmetall, Gut Hoffnungshütte. The company has a tiny starting capital, only 1 million Reichsmarks. In reality, Mefo produces nothing. It has no factories. It has no laboratories. It is a shell company. It consists of letterhead and a bank account. This shell is the engine for the largest rearmament program in history. The scheme functions through paper I O Us. A German arms manufacturer receives an order in 1935. The government demands 1,000 tanks. But the state does not pay in Reichsmarks. Instead, the manufacturer receives Mefo bills. These are promissory notes. They are checks from a fake company. The paper states that Mefo will pay the full amount in 5 years. The manufacturer cannot wait 5 years. They have workers to pay. They have steel to buy. They need liquid cash immediately. They take the Mefo bills to a private German bank. The bank accepts the paper. The bankers know the Reichsbank stands behind Mefo. They know the state will honor the debt. The bank hands over real Reichsmarks. The manufacturer walks away with cash. This is where the financial magic happens. The private bank now holds the Mefo bills. They take them to the Central Reichsbank. The central bank uses its power to print money and converts the bills to cash. But a critical wall exists. These transactions never appear on the official Reichsbank balance sheet. Mefo bills are private obligations. They are not listed as government debt. They are not listed as bank debt. On paper, these are the private debts of a small research firm. Foreign intelligence agencies look at Germany's books. They see nothing. The massive military spending is invisible. The scale was enormous. Between 1934 and 1938, Germany issued 12 billion Reichsmarks in Mefo bills. The records show the sheer volume of paper. This funded half of all German military spending during those years. Events accelerated. The secret could not stay hidden forever. But by the time the world noticed, the tanks were already built. The trick had worked. 10 billion Reichsmarks. That was the entire national debt of Germany in 1932. Within 4 years, the regime secretly doubled that figure. They added massive hidden obligations to fund a private war machine. No one outside the German borders knew the true scale of the spending. It was a ghost economy. By 1936, every military restriction of the Versailles Treaty lay in ruins. The results are visible in the archival footage. Thousands of tanks roll off assembly lines, aircraft wings crowd the hangars, submarines slide into the water. A modern army stands ready for combat. The Allies remained silent. They did not intervene because they lacked the data. They did not realize the rearmament had already crossed the point of no return. But a massive problem remained. Those MIFO bills carried a deadline. The government issued the first bills in 1934 with a 5-year maturity window. This meant the debt became due in 1939. Germany did not have 12 billion Reichsmarks in the treasury. The government was broke. The clock was ticking. How does a bankrupt nation pay a 12 billion mark bill? At first glance, it was state finance, but in reality, it was a Ponzi scheme. A Ponzi scheme relies on a simple lie. You promise high returns to investors. You pay the old investors using the cash from new ones. The system functions only if new money enters the cycle. Eventually, the pool of new investors dries up. Then, the scheme collapses. Nazi Germany followed this exact blueprint. MIFO bills were simple promises to pay in the future. The leadership banked on massive economic growth to cover the debt. By 1938, the growth slowed down. The domestic economy could not generate the revenue needed to settle the accounts. The scheme was failing. It got worse. Where do you find 12 billion Reichsmarks when your factories are already at a breaking point? You take it by force. March 1938. Germany annexes Austria in the Anschluss. The German army enters Vienna. Soldiers secure the vaults. Austria possesses gold reserves, foreign currency, and heavy industrial assets. Germany seizes everything, but the debt still grew. September 1938, the Munich Agreement is signed. Germany takes the Sudetenland from Czechoslovakia. The borders shift overnight. March 1939. German troops occupy the rest of the Czech territory. The camera records the columns of trucks entering Prague. Czechoslovakia holds significant gold reserves and the Škoda Arms works. These were the most advanced weapons factories in Europe. Germany seizes the machines and the gold. Events accelerated. The MIFO bills issued in 1934 were now due. The treasury was still empty. September 1939. Germany invades Poland. The objective is no longer just territory. Poland has vast agricultural production and rich natural resources. Millions of people are trapped within the new borders. The regime takes the land, the food, and the lives. The Ponzi scheme had found its new investors. 100% of national resources. That was the price of the Nazi war machine. Germany seized everything. Labor became forced. The economy was not merely immoral, it was a structural predator designed for conquest. To survive, the regime had to consume other nations. Why did the system require war? It was a mathematical trap. Hjalmar Schacht recognized the danger early. By 1937, he issued formal warnings to Hitler. The economy was overheating. Spending reached unsustainable levels. A total collapse sat on the horizon. Hitler ignored the data. January 7, 1939. This was the deadline. The first MIFO bills were due for payment in just weeks. Schacht and the Reichsbank directors submitted a final desperate report. The document demanded three things: drastic cuts to rearmament, a massive reduction in state spending, a balanced budget to stop hyperinflation. Hitler's response came on January 20, 1939. He did not balance the budget. Instead, he fired Schacht as president of the Reichsbank. Schacht had built the machine. But the machine contained a time bomb. Hitler decided to delay the explosion by feeding the bomb more fuel. He fed it with the annexation of Austria. He fed it with the occupation of Czechoslovakia. Then came Poland, France, and the Soviet Union. War was no longer just an ideology. It was an economic necessity. By 1939, Germany faced two paths: total financial ruin or immediate expansion. Hitler chose expansion. But MIFO bills were only one part of the revenue stream. Other sources existed. They were darker. When the Wehrmacht conquered a territory, the looting began immediately. It was systematic. It was industrial. The footage shows the aftermath: empty vaults and stripped factories. The Nazis seized gold reserves. They confiscated foreign currency. They stole private art collections and dismantled heavy machinery. They took everything of value to keep the gears turning. There was no turning back. Thus, the theft became the policy.